بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمد ونصلي على رسول الكريم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask him to send peace and blessing on our Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We continue this series, Islamic unity and the middle part during differences. When there are differences, and especially serious differences that occur, then what's the middle way? What are the rules, the guiding rules? Of course, to talk without a actual case, the principle, talk about principles without actually a real case, a real incident would be very hard to. In fiqh studies, when you study with ulama, muftis and so forth, then they give you a course Suratul Masala. Suratul Masala means like a case study, like an example, practical example. So then the masala is more the fiqh, the rules and the principles are very clear on when a real case, when you look at an actual case. So the case study here is what? Is the split among the ulama and the Muslims, not just the ulama, the Muslims in general of the subcontinent, when they had differed in whether a country called Pakistan should be made or not. And this is a debate that raged for nearly 50 years. And of course it culminated in 1947 with the creation of a country called Pakistan. And but before this, and while it was going on, and even a little bit afterwards, well, the debates were very heated to the point of insults were being thrown around. So the second question, so there's 7 questions that were sent to Mawlana Zakariyya Rahimahullah, and he's answering these questions. And the second question, who in your opinion is correct, and what is your opinion in these matters? So he first says, look, I'm summarizing, putting my own words, it's quite a long, we are very little people. The 2 people that you're talking about, the leaders of the 2 camps, they're the most senior ulama of the subcontinent. One has been teaching hadith and fiqh and tafsir for 57 years. His Islamic academic career, teaching hadith and fiqh and ilm, 57 years he's been teaching. The other one has been teaching for almost 50 years himself. And his start is in Masjid Nabawi in Medina Munawwara, teaching. That's why it's called Mawlana Hussain Madani, because 19 years he was teaching, lecturing in Medina. He used to teach 13 classes a day, 12, 13 classes a day, and he used to sleep like 2-3 hours a night. When somebody is like 2 decades of his life is spent in one of the best places in the world, at that time, this is pre-petroleum days. It wasn't easy to live there. If you ask the people who lived there before, very zakat and sadaqah was sent from the subcontinent, from India, most of the Muslim world, to there because the people were generally very poor. So when you have 2 personalities of that stature and ilm and taqwa, because their personal taqwa he talks about because he knew them personally, when they differ, he goes, who am I to sit judge above them? I'm like a student. So you're asking me to judge the decision of these people who spent half a century, they've been jailed and they've gone through all these hardships for Islam and Muslims, and you want me to judge, and this is like above our pay grade. And in this time and age, from that you take one principle. Hadhrat Shaykh Mawlana Zakariyya is one of the greatest muhaddiseen. His book, like Awjuzul Masalik and other works that he's done, they're like reference book in the Arab world. He's from India, but in the Arab world they're references. The Maraji ulama put them on their shelf, like the Muwatta, his commentary on Muwatta and other books that he's worked upon. They're like references for the ulama, So he's not a lightweight himself, but he understands that these people are much bigger than me. Their sacrifice, I'm like their student level. I can't judge them. He goes, who am I to judge? And then he said, I'll read some of what he says. Now I ask you, are these 2 personalities such that anyone can compare with them as far as the outlook of the future is concerned? Because they've got 50 years of khidmah of deen, both of them under their belt. They've served and with great sacrifices. Can there be someone better than them to tell you what the future outlook of the Muslim should be? And are they such that any inept person can find faults with their opinions or attack the wisdom of their suggestions? And how can one like myself find the courage, one whose opinion is of no consequence and who is a mere novice in their presence? My position is such that when today I see the names of these personalities written on notices posted up everywhere, and what is written about them, I become filled with anger and surprise and ask myself, what has happened to this world? What new trend is with this respect and honor for the saintly ones has completely disappeared? Like ihtiram, respect for the pious, ahlullah, the ulama, and he's talking about then, we're talking about 70, 80 years ago. Interesting words, the translator is new trends. These are words that we use. What's trending? And on notices, Facebook, probably today is probably even worse what people say. And they just attack and vilify and insult and disrespect. Because it makes me angry. Because I respect both. They have two different views on what should happen to the Muslims politically, the political identity of Muslims in India. But the way people are treating them, the way they write about them in newspapers, the way because like people are crossing the lines. It should be such that the learned and educated one should say something about them. There still is some scope. If it is said that the learned and educated one should say something about them, there still is some scope that it would not be so bad. But what do we find? The critics are those whose knowledge and expertise is limited to writing an article or two in some newspaper or other, and the language they use. They use language which an angry elder would, like how an angry elder would talk to a child. Like how a father or grandfather would talk to a child. That's the language that they talk about, these mashayikh. Seeing these things, I cannot but express my strongest surprise and disapproval. Take very careful note of this advice of mine. Speak only and pass judgment only on those things about which you know all the pros and cons. It is only possible to make a decision between any two parties once you have thoroughly acquainted yourself with the arguments of both. When whoever you notice is of any of the two is against the Sharia, then do not give consideration to any of them. If they actually are doing something in Sharia, because it's a very grey area, it's a political identity of Muslims in the subcontinent. Do we make a nation state called Pakistan, which doesn't have a history before? Historically, there's no such thing as a nation state. Do we make a nation state? You know, like these countries that we have now, these are like a new invention, really. You know, so there are arguments, there's cons for that as well. It's not exactly that it's all, you know, that Islam says do this, you know. So it's a grey area. So he said that, but if you find anybody does anything explicit against the Sharia, then their piety, their piousness and so forth should be disregarded, because it is something that is explicit against the Sharia. Because anything contrary to Allah and His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is completely unacceptable. Then he gives an incident about Umar ibn Aziz Rahmatullah alayhi, the second Umar, one of the Khulafa ibn Umayyah. So he was a tabi'i after Sahaba. So somebody asked about when Sahaba differed, because he lived through that time when Sahaba had ikhtilaf, as I mentioned last week. And he said, تِلْكَ دِمَاءٌ طَهَّرَ اللَّهُ أَيْدِينَا مِنْهَا فَلَا نُلَوِّثُ أَلْسِنَةَ بِهَا. He goes, blood was spilt. Allah has purified our hands from it. We're not involved in that fight. He's a tabi'i after, because they want him to say something. We will not pollute our tongues with it by talking about against the Sahaba. We'll not insult this side or that side. This is the position of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'at. All the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, we have a stance of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Like we say, Allah is pleased. We don't pick sides. We don't say this one is right, this one is wrong. This is the stance of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'at. We love all the Ahlul Sunnah, all the Ahlul Bayt. We didn't go down that road. Alhamdulillah, the mainstream Muslims don't go down the road of attacking one Sahabi over another Sahabi. And then he mentioned some hadith about keeping silent and the benefits of keeping silent. He said the hadith, narrated by Tabarani, that when any issue arises, there are three possibilities. Where it's clear-cut guidance, then we should follow it. The second is that where there's falsehood, it's wrong. It's quite clear, avoid it. Then there are things where there is doubt. It's not explicitly right, it's not explicitly wrong. Refer such a case to the experts of the field. Refer this to the experts of the field. I mean, if you're not an expert in that field, how can you make a judgment? So it's a hadith of Tabarani. You're supposed to refer to the experts of a field. Rasulullah ﷺ is also reported to have said, he who is very hasty and so bold as to pass verdicts is also bold in taking the path toward Jahannam. Those who rush to pass judgment, they make their way to judgment. They rush to make judgment, they make their way to Jahannam easy. Na'uzubillah. Sayyidina Abdullah Masud radiallahu anhu said, he who is prepared to give an answer to every fatwa asked of him is a mad person. Majnoon is like he's lost. Every question he's asked, he's going to answer it. And majority of the Sahaba's answer and Tabi'een's answers were, La adri, I don't know. Majority of the answers. Imam Malik, I think if I'm correct, Imam Shafi, Rahmah, one of the two, there's 40 questions were sent from another country in that time. Months of journey. I think like 36 out of 40, he said, I don't know. Now we got live ask questions, TV shows. You never hear people say, I don't know. I've never heard it on TV, those live Q&A sessions they have. Everything they know, mashallah. Maybe they know. He further and he puts some of the إذا وصل الأمر إلى غير فانتظر الساعة, when people are making decisions about matters and they're not fit for it. So when an affair is handed to people who are incompetent, meaning they are carrying out the responsibility, then await the hour. When people are doing the jobs that they're not qualified to do, then wait for the day of judgment. The day of judgment is close. Another hadith, he says that when there is anything emanating from them which is against the Sharia, these elders. So we have rules in Deen. Then certainly the word of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is our guide. لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. There is no obedience to any man, any creation, which transgresses the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no obedience to parents or ruler or anybody, Imam, Alim, Shaykh, Mufti, doesn't matter who he is, if it means disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and then he gives some guidelines that ulama, fuqaha, because these are great ulama. It's a case study, right, to understand, but we can extract principles out of this and we can apply it in other situations as well. He said there are rules in Sharia, and he gives some rules, some maxims, which the fuqaha follow. When they do a fatwa or a ruling, pass a ruling, they have to follow. All affairs are judged according to the object that has been attained, that has to be obtained. Al-umuru bimaqasidiha. Hence, a thing is considered to be permissible or prohibited according to what is intended to be attained. Another rule is personal harm to a specific person should be tolerated in the interest of warding of harm affecting the general public. Another rule, whoever is caught between two calamities, baliyatayn, like two, in English expression is the lesser of two evils. Like it's two bad things. Which one are you going to choose? You choose the least bad thing. You don't have a choice. Certain situation. These are the things that are guiding their process. Should choose the lesser of the two. In the matter which there is an aspect of halal and haram, the haram will take precedent over the halal. The matter will be regarded as haram. If the thing is mixed with halal and haram, right, then you consider it haram. These are rules, and these are principles that guide. Now he said these imams, that they are, he said their example is like, he gives a very nice example of about 2 pages, that like a driver who's taken through a very dangerous territory. There's 2 drivers. They know 2 different roads. So there's 2 drivers. They know there's 2 different roads to follow. They know all the swamps. They know all the dangers. But one driver, he's an expert. They're both experts, but they've chosen 2 different roads. Right? Because they're the experts. They know how to get you to destination. They know all the swamps are. They know where all the gravel roads are. They know all the details. They know all the details of the road. Now, you don't have a choice, and you're not a driver. You don't do forward driving, as an example. You don't know these roads and so forth. You have to pick which one now. You're at their mercy. And he said, and this is what these imams are. They know, they're looking forward. They know the road, and they're seeing different pros and cons. With their 50 years of teaching and experience and dealing with Muslims' issues and so forth, they're coming with 2 different conclusions. Right? One is saying this and one is saying that. It's now you have to trust which one, because you don't know yourself. So he said now there's a choice. The Muslims of India have to make a choice. So then he said, I'll read a part of what he's saying about this choice. My saintly elders have always had difference of opinion and have always been divided in these 2 issues, and still are. Both these theories are noteworthy and merit thought in their respective places. None of the 2 can be said to be definitely categorically wrong. Neither of these 2 stances, pro-Pakistan, anti-Pakistan, neither of these are, like you should make Pakistan, obviously it was made, but at that time, because this is like preceding it, you cannot say either one of them is wrong. In such a case, it is not then necessary that a person should adopt the view which in his mind seems most favorable, in such a case, is it not then necessary that a person should adopt the view which in his mind seems most favorable and in which there appears to be less harm, the lesser of the 2 evils? Is there not necessary for him for him to advise his friends and adherents to do likewise? On the other hand, another way presents itself, which lies between the 2 extremes. Should not such a path be pursued on condition that such a driver or guide comes forward or take passengers along that path? It fills me with disgust, and because of some dissent in our ranks, we become so worked up and thereafter resort to denouncing and insulting such great personalities. Alright, there's ikhtilaf, there's a difference of opinion on the issue. But people, they start insulting these people, like all their 50 years of service to Islam and Deen and Muslims, to the Ummah, then we discount. If I ask you, if the leaders of a people are such as we claim them to be, when we denounce and criticize them in newspapers and speeches, then does not the condition and description of the followers of these leaders become quite clear and self-evident? What we actually are doing by insulting and degrading our elders is to denounce and openly advertise our own inability, weakness and foolishness. When a sorry state of affairs, what a sorry state of affairs that those beautiful qualities which once belonged to Muslims are now being discarded by them and are being adopted by others. Today, in spite of tremendous diversity among our enemies, unity has been forged. He's talking about the colonials, the British, because they colonized India. He goes, look at them, how they're working. They got World War I, World War II out of system. They're making treaties, unions, and so forth. And he goes, what we're supposed to be doing, they're doing. There is a respect for each other's opinion. And even though openly they show mutual disagreement, we find them in secret consultation. Now look at us. He said, like, this is supposed to be our behavior. It's more embarrassing. It's worse for us when we behave. Then the third question. So there's two questions. What should we do? Should we lay ourselves down and die? Should we not join any side? So this is the way the person has asked the question. He said there's three parts to it. Firstly, he said about myself. He goes, my father was very strict. From the ages 7 to 17, he did not let me mix and play with anybody. He said that I personally have this thing where I don't like to go to big functions and speeches and so on, rallies, like we have in the subcontinent, like rallies. Like to get 100,000 people is not a big deal in the subcontinent. You know, this is like to get a few 100,000 people, maybe a million. You know, in America, if they get a million-man march or woman march, whatever, it's a big deal. But in like even today in Pakistan, it's not too much of a big deal to get that many people rallied. So he's saying, because of my own personal childhood, I don't like to be in these rallies. Plus, I don't like the way, because they're so bombastic, they're shouting in the speeches and so forth, because I don't like that. And because they make many mistakes. Because the one speaker was speaking, he made mistakes. The ulama corrected him during the speech because it was probably a serious issue. And then he got angry and he left. But he said, my own personal nature is that I don't like to attend. I'm a very shy person by nature. So if you want me to come into a political field, but it's not really my personal nature. So because this is my weakness, it's not my strength. This is my weakness. I can't do this. Then he further talks about the praises of two personalities. Then he talks about students in madrasas. Because students in madrasas studying becoming ulama, they're studying sharia and fiqh and so forth and deen and hadith, they should not be involved in politics. He goes, those that do, they become politically active while in madrasa. After madrasa, they can do whatever. But usually you find them not to be very good ulama afterwards, because they wasted a lot of their time in fikr and worry and concern. That's why boarding madrasas are necessary. He talks about where they're totally focused in their studies. For the 6, 7, 8 years of their studies, they're focused fully, because that makes them a very competent alim, can deal with all the fiqh and then afterwards they can attend to all the ummah's problems. But while they're studying, they should not be distracted. Even the ulama who emphasize on tazkiyah, on ilm of suluk, on the purification of the heart, he said even they don't take students like murids and disciples for that science, for Islamic spirituality, while they're studying ulum of sharia. Because in that time, in study time, they should be studying. They should not be distracted even by that. Even that's a part of deen, to work on taharatul, purification of the heart. He said that's important, but while they're studying, in study time, they should study. While they're studying, they should be focused on their studies. So he gives some advices to students and respecting of teachers as well, which is, he goes, you can't lose respect. Even if your teachers are from this side or that side, you have to keep your heart clean for your teachers. Then he finally talks about the public getting involved in politics, the average person. Especially that, Rasulullah ﷺ said, to guard the borders of Islam, So he goes, Muslims should be involved, should care about the matters of the Muslim. And he said that all efforts that are made to revive deen and lift the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is jihad. Then he talks about actual jihad, the rewards for it. We don't have to explain that. I think you've heard of it. It is actual jihad. When I'm talking about actual jihad, I hope you know what I'm talking about. The big J. The one that thing. But he said jihad. See, this is one thing to understand. The word jihad, when it comes in fiqh books, it's very specific. We're talking about fighting. It's called armed combat. All right, the ruler announces and Muslim fight or defending or whatever it is, but it's actually armed combat. But jihad itself, the concept of jihad in Islam, anything that is done where you use your wealth and energy to uplift the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes a jihad. So there's general. And then there's specifically is qital within that. Where in the Quran Hadith mention qital, fighting, or jihad, meaning fighting, because generally the word jihad is known among Muslims to mean one thing. Right? And that's the correct understanding, that because that's the greatest expression of jihad, where you give up, you look death in the eyes, and a person gives his life up for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're not talking about people going out and bombing themselves in the middle of a shopping center, and this is a corruption of the word, but of the meaning. That is a sin in Islam, to kill innocent people. But jihad is part of Islam. Fighting, combat is part of Islam. There's rules for it. So he talks about it, but then he also says also other works of deen, and then he proves it gives all the different hadiths and so forth. Jihad is much vaster, even though fighting is the highest expression of that. So, and then, and he says this sentence, I'll just read this one sentence because it's a long discussion. At this stage, it is necessary for me to stress something else. Note that jihad is not only that in which battle is waged and fighting takes place, even if that is the highest rank of jihad. Every effort which is made for Allah's word, to i'la kalimatillah, and the will to be dominated and for the supremacy of Islam and truth is included in jihad. Speaking in the face of a tyrant, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the best jihad. It's not an easy thing. Try speaking the truth. One of our rulers in the Muslim world. Speak truth to a leader. See how they, no matter how liberal he claims to be, you'll see how what happens. There's so many ulama in jail, unfortunately, in the Muslim world. So that's the first thing. Then he talks about shaheed. And he says, he's in his book, Awjazul Masalik, because if you put all the narration together, there's 60 forms of people becoming shaheed. The highest form is to face the enemy, and that's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Jannah is under the shade of the swords. Where's the swords? Where the enemy meet, that's where you lift the swords, right? Jannah's under that. This is because if facing the enemy, you're going to lose your life. You're putting yourself right in the front line. So it's not. So he mentions about all the different types of shaheed. So that means that even the definition of jihad is quite vast, and the definition of shaheed is also vast as well. But where in Sharia and Quran and Sunnah talks about fighting, and when the word of jihad is used for fighting, then it is, you can't misinterpret. We should not be changing the ayat. Here jihad means general jihad and doesn't mean specific jihad and so forth. The people are doing that. We're changing the meanings of the Quran because we're not living that life, or it doesn't suit our arguments. Then the Shaykh Rahimahullah, he says so there's some points I'll read from the book. Thereafter, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned all these various forms of martyrdom. Apart from these 7 forms, there are approximately 60 types of deaths where the glad tidings of shahada, becoming shaheed, have been given in the hadith. In the second volume of Awjaz al-Masalik, this humble writer has collected them all. It is indeed astonishing that Allah and His truthful Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam are pointing out the causes for the spiritual progress and virtue of the ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while at the same time the ummah themselves, in their attacks upon each other, are narrowing the doors of Allah's special mercy. Right? It is a common fault today that those engaged in some other form of dini activity and effort, whether in teaching, instruction, tabligh, jihad, suluk, spiritual training, consider those in other fields of dini work to be wasting their time in things and affairs non-beneficial. So you find today when somebody is doing one work of deen, they'll criticize and put down the other work of deen. So those engaged in tabligh, it's an amazing work. Different forms of tabligh and different forms of da'wah there. But people are debating with mulhideen, with atheists, or ex-Muslim murtadeen, or they're debating with Christians. That is a form of da'wah. Or people are inviting Muslims to bring them to the masjid. Or people there's so many works of da'wah. But what happens when a person loves the work they're doing? He said, this is that Allah has opened so many doors of rahmah, of ways you can do khidmat of deen, service to deen. And he goes, and people want to say, no, our work is the best work and the only work, and this is the only haqq. So Hadhrat Shaykh Mawlana Zakariyya Rahimahullah is giving, consider those in other fields of dini work to be wasting their time. They criticize them, and they put their work down. Sometimes they do not even hesitate to accuse the others of being lost and astray. Someone's doing one work of deen. So for example, I'm like teaching madrasa during the day, involved madrasa. Then of course the ghalaba, what will dominate my mind is madrasa, and I can consider that the best. Somebody's debating with Christians, to defend Islam, or someone is debating with atheists, because there's so many attacks online in their Islam. They're doing that work. But then they might think that work is the only work and that is the main work and every other work is not. Some people involved in charity work. There's different lanes. There's so many different lanes and so many different departments of deen. In all this, they confine all the numerous aspects and efforts of Islamic progress and progressive action to their own kind of activity. They think that the progress of Islam is only what they're doing. This is how Islam will progress. But in reality, all of these are hadiths of Rasulullah, like where a person becomes shaheed, and all the different forms of jihad that are mentioned in hadith, efforts that can be done to raise the deen. Actually, all of them are lifting the Muslims and so forth. So he said, hence it seems as if they have excluded all other dini efforts from the circle of Islam. Alright? Rasulullah ﷺ said, the deen of Islam is easy. Whosoever proceeds to adopt hardness and difficulty therein will be overcome. So walk a straight path therein, follow it closely, and give glad tidings to the people for their righteous deeds. If people do good works, you have to call them good work. Abshir, or give him glad, mashallah. Make dua for them. Be happy on the good work. Someone is doing something, you're not doing it. You might be doing another work of deen. You don't put down the work of deen. If the work is established as right according to Sharia, we don't put the efforts. Someone is engaged in ibadah. Someone is engaged in charity. So many works, so many good things are there in Islam. Rasulullah ﷺ also said, make things easy and do not create difficulty. Give people glad tidings by enticing them to deen and not create in them disgust for deen. Yassiru wa la tu'assiru, bashiru wa la tunaffiru. Hadith of Rasulullah ﷺ. In the author of the book, Bahajatun Nufus writes, once Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu asked Rasulullah ﷺ, what is it that you have sent, what is it that you have been sent with to all mankind? He replied, with reason. This indicates that the commandments of Sharia should be followed together with reason. Here we find another hadith that Rasulullah, that the Day of Judgment rewards will be granted in proportion to reason. How much we've been given aql, and that aql is supposed to be applied. It's a ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're supposed to use it. Rasulullah sallallahu replied, reason has no limits, but whoever considers and takes the things made lawful by Allah to be lawful and the things made unlawful to be unlawful shall be a man of reason. That which Allah says halal is halal. That which is haram says haram. This is a person that is of sound mind. He doesn't try to, alright, I might not be doing I might be even in haram, but I know haram is haram. It's possible, right? If he strives further than that he becomes an abid. And if he strives still further, he becomes jawad, a brave and generous person. Now, if a man strives in ibadah and also shows courage in the performance of good deeds, while on the other hand, he does not have intelligence to follow and partake in the lawful things, to avoid the unlawful, he's of those whose efforts prove to be fruitless in this world, even though they think they're doing good. It should be well understood that to take something to be lawful while it has already been made lawful by Allah indeed shows lack of reason in the something unlawful to be considered lawful, while it shows a lack of reason in the side of his deen. Similarly, when one acts narrow-mindedly in deen or tries to amend or alter the teachings of deen, this also shows lack of reason. Such a person do not act rationally. I'm not trying to tell you that one is not supposed to entice, persuade, or encourage others to get involved in one's own type of activity. What I am in fact saying is that you should never become a fanatic in stressing the importance of your field of work, that you exceed the limits. The results can be that concerned to your own field, you leave the impression that no obligatory act fard, no compulsory wajib act, and no excuse will be of any consequence. This should not be the case, that you begin to look upon those who do not involve in your political efforts as inmates of hell, irreligious, being infidels. For this is what I have read in newspaper articles and that has been heard in some people's speeches. It is quite an astonishing thing that these types of accusations come even from the tongues of high-level personalities and responsible, respectable persons. He's talking about political parties and so forth. So this is Hadhrat Shaykh Mawlana Zakariyya. He's giving the guidelines of how to approach different works of deen, different efforts people are making. That which is black and white in Sharia, that is haram, it's haram. No if buts about it. That which is halal is good, that we encourage it. That which is in a grey area, right? If you're not an expert of the field, and when you're talking about halal, haram, we're talking about fiqh. If you're not a specialist of that, then the obligation of me, anybody, ulama and non-ulama, if you don't know that specific area, you have to keep quiet. What people are doing because they support their group or their sheikh, they start attacking. They don't look at whether a person's done right or wrong. If somebody's done wrong, in Islam, I'm not obliged to defend him. In the sense of, if he's done something against the Sharia explicitly, in public he's saying nonsense or talking wrong or something haram, then as a Muslim, I have to speak up. No, this is wrong. This is haram. Because there's no, and I don't have to follow him. Actually, I have to disobey him. When he comes to it, he tells me something to do wrong. The well-trodden path is known. What is the deen is known. The Sharia is known. What all these books say, what's agreed upon is known. Now somebody comes along and tries to change something or stir up something. Because there's a rule, Khalif tu'araf, oppose and you become known in Arabic. Oppose and you become known. That's how you become famous. If you just do what everybody's doing, all the good things that everybody has always been doing, nobody will know you. So you have to, this is a madhab, this is a school for some people. This is what they do to stir up things. Some sheikhs do it as well, unfortunately. Alright? So we have to, so what is known, what is right, what is halal, what is haram is known. And then there's a grey area. Like these political matters are there's a grey area. What exactly, but if a person does wrong, we have to say it's wrong. If he does right, we have to say it's right. And we keep it within that, as I said last week, we keep it within that issue. And then finally, he talks about the scope of jihad, what is shaheed. We have a broader perspective of that, even though jihad fighting is the highest form of jihad itself. Within jihad fighting, combat is the highest form. Then finally finishes off with people attacking, doing one effort of deen. Some people might be in tabligh, some people might be involved in madrasa, some people might be involved in tasawwuf or spiritual efforts, or they might be involved in tazkiyah, spiritual reform. Some might be involved in da'wah to non-Muslims, some might be debating Christian. There's so many efforts. He said Allah has made His doors of His rahmah many, and has shown the way for the lifting up of deen, many doors, many ways. This ummah will be lifted not by one jamaat or group. It will be lifted up by all these multitude of efforts across the world. The ummah doing all this. That's how the ummah will come back to its deen. Therefore, each of these people involved in effort, it is in if their goal is the raising the deen of Allah, it is not in their interest to attack another work of deen, because they're also helping. If people are involved in madrasa, they're helping tabligh. If those involved in tabligh, they're helping the ones that are involved in spiritual reform. Those involved in jihad, they're involved. All of these works are they support each other, because they're all part of deen. If they're all part of deen, then it is not. People should not be talking. Someone is doing one work of deen should not be attacking jihad or tabligh or madrasa or khanqa or suluk or any other branch of deen. There's no need for that, actually. But the problem is that those who understood their work to be the only work of deen, and that is only Islam. And it's not. But they understand, like they'll have these narrow mindedness, and they will open their mouth and criticize other works of deen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding, protect us from that, and may Allah give us understanding and tawfiq to practice what we say here. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallah bihamdi, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursalin, alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Jazakumullah khair.